Yeah.
I don't know. And I don't know what that means, like in the memory world, there's some people that are like, yeah, he's not, and it's like, you don't really know the intricacies of what that means,
Yeah.
why. So yeah, we sat down. I met him at the airport. He was the kindest man ever. Took us around town, was so happy to meet us and talk to us. He claimed to be a hermit, so I could see how he was very excited to share
He
with
doesn't
us
get out very often.
and get out and really, let us know everything.
And share stories of his childhood and everything else. It was really pleasant.
Yeah. So nothing against the man. He was very pleasant. I enjoyed the day and a half that we spent with him and the dinners that we shared. But man, when we sat down to interview him and talk about the stories, I walked out of that and I was just like, I don't know about this anymore.
Yeah. It was bewildering.
It was
Again,
just out there.
Yeah, it was out there. And you guys can see that interview on Patreon, by the way. I cut it short for the sake of the video, but if you have a look on Patreon, it's the full unedited version of Ed. And if watching that gives you an idea of the conversations we had afterwards as well, because it jumps from, ultra terrestrials to Sasquatch to the ghost of dinosaurs, all these fantastical things. And it's really hard for someone like us who's seeking, part of me wants to believe this is real, right?
Same.
Initially. I get into this and I'm like, I'm hoping. So there is a bias. And although you would think hearing someone like Ed would strengthen that bias, it actually works contrary to it. And it makes it, I really, really like afterwards, after that particular encounter, I felt myself backing away a little bit in the other direction.
Yeah.
You had the same feeling.
Yeah.
And however, there were some really interesting things that he'd brought up, and talking about remote viewing aliens, which to me is endlessly fascinating because that's another thing I want to believe in.
Sure. Yeah.
But when it came to the practical remote viewing stuff, like he did a session in front of us, which again really got nowhere, because he's like, oh, this is where this guy is right now.
Right.
I'm like, okay, I could have said he's in a field of flowers, and there's no way of disproving that.
Right.
And a lot of what Ed was telling us, even the stories, there was no evidence. I'm not going to say proof, but there was no evidence. There was not a shred of evidence.
Feedback.
No feedback.
Whether he was right or wrong.
Exactly.
That bugged me. Yeah.
It bugged me very much. He had some cool stories, like I said, but you just have to take his word for it. And memory is a tricky thing. It tends to not play in your favor when recounting, facts. So, we leave, we go meet Ed. There's this whole thing happening. It was interesting because on that day, it was June 16th. There was also something going around on Twitter, which was the resonant frequency.
Oh, that's right.
Of the Earth was at 50.
Yeah.
As opposed to being around 7.8 and 15, somewhere around there. And no one knew what that meant. No one knew if that was a solar flare or if that was a malfunction in the equipment. But it was all the buzz on Twitter. Did you feel differently that day?
I was just excited, but nothing out of the ordinary would have been like something's going on. It just felt like a cool, interesting day where we were.
Yeah. I felt more calm.
Okay.
And it was notable, like enough that I noted it even before I knew. I was like, I feel really good about, like, I feel like in a good, and then I heard that, it kind of like doubled down. I was like, oh, it's this, my conspiracy mind took over.
Yeah. But yeah, with Ed, the thing that, like I said, that bugged me was every session that he did and all the like things the stories he was telling us about remote viewing sessions he's done, projects he's working on, were all about things that you can never verify.
Yeah. That bugged me.
Where, something to do with aliens and
sure.
What happened a million years ago at this location. Like, okay, it's interesting. His theories for them or whatever he sees. And then how certain he was.
That was another red
too
flag.
Much, right? There was no question he was wrong.
Yeah. And everyone else was wrong.
Right.
And that to me is a red flag when, you're the person who thinks the whole world is crazy and you're not crazy. The likelihood is that it's the opposite.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's crazy, but I'm saying that the claims he was so certain of that he didn't leave a margin for error. Yeah. And from what we found out afterwards, speaking to other people in the remote viewing, space, was that there is a vast margin of error with remote viewing. Yeah. And that is notable. And scientists and physicists who study this will tell you it is not accurate.
Yeah.
It is not accurate, but it is also not to be dismissed.
Yep.
And that's kind of, what led to the ongoing of the project.
Yeah.
So we wrap up this thing with Ed, which, by the way, I want to, thank Ed again. It was, really, it was fun to get both sides of remote viewing, to get these crazy different edges of the spectrum. And I think in the world of remote viewing, I think more people would do a story on Ed and then separately do a story on someone else. To have them both in the same video, I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. One thing I want to say, though, when he did do his session, I remember feeling really inspired by it.
Same.
I watched it and doing his practice, and I was like, oh,
I did too.
This guy's really in it. Like, I want to do a session. Like, I want to be like this. In the end, he said that if you wanted to do a full session, it would have taken
45 minutes
or longer, the detail that he goes to. And I remember we walked out for a break, and I was like, wow, that's, it was really cool to watch him do that.
Yep.
But then, it didn't go anywhere, so I was kind of let down a little bit. But it looked like he was
channeling something.
It also gave me a vibe of when I was in Nepal interviewing this guy that claimed to be a natural memory guy.
Oh, the speed reader guy.
Speed reader, he could memorize a page just by blah, 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 and he'd read it,
Yeah.
right? And I interviewed him, he did a demo, and I left feeling so perplexed and sort of inspired and not sure what to think. And it felt like that, and it, not to say that Ed is a con man, but it felt, I had that, like, he confused me, he tricked me maybe, or there's a little bit of pizzazz there that I don't know.
The difference is there's what Ed's saying, there's no way of verifying it, right? And so it does let you linger in that space a little longer. Yeah. And I remember actually during the session at one point, he was smelling something. You kind of see him on camera and he's like disgusted by what he's smelling. And before that happened, when he's picking up the smells, even before he was disgusted, I remember thinking to myself, pungent. I kept getting pungent. And then he said pungent.
Yes.
And I was like, I literally, like, my heart skipped a beat because I was like, this is what I was picking up. And I feel like and I mentioned it to him, he's like, oh, that's a normal thing. It happens all the time that people get, the same feelings. And hey, maybe he's right.
Yeah.
I think he might be onto something.
I forgot that part, that because I was over his shoulder filming, and I remember like a millisecond before he would write something down, I almost felt what he was going to write down. It was a really weird feeling. Yep.
So, we end our time with Ed. Ed, I get the feeling Ed, thinks this whole documentary is going to be about him, which maybe I didn't make it clear in the beginning, and that was my fault. That but I did tell him that we were going to be visiting other people. But Ed wanted to get really deep into what it is he does, and if you guys want to check out what Ed does, because I do think it's interesting, and I do think it merits more investigation, because obviously he trained Brett, and Brett does this for a living, and Ed claims he's got the best students in the country.
Yeah.
And, we learn from them, and then we're seeing results. We're newbies to this. Listen, so there is something there.
And he was a part of these projects.
He was part of
that's
SRI.
Not a lie. That's real. So why would he be there if there wasn't something to what he's able to do,
Correct. Yeah, he was read in. The other thing is, like, he told me about the billet structure, that he was read in. There were 100 people read into this project only, which means that as soon as someone leaves the project or retires or whatever, they bring one more person in, and that number caps at 100.
Yeah.
And so very highly, highly classified. I can't stress this enough. This was one of the most top secret projects ever in the United States government that we know about. This is one of the top, because you don't get top secret to that level and hear about it normally. So, one of the more notable unclassified projects ever in existence. So we end our time with Ed, and during this time, I was reaching out. I've reached out to Hal Puthoff. I've reached out to McMonagle. We reached out to Pat Price, was it, or Paul Smith?
Oh, Paul Smith.
Lynn Buchanan.
Right. Yep.
So all these we've reached out. I wanted to get as much information as I could. Now this brings us. We finished with Ed. Let's talk about Joe McMonagle. We reached out to him online. Nancy McMonigal, Scooter, responds, and she's super bubbly, lovely, full of energy. She happens to be Bob Monroe's stepdaughter of the Monroe Institute and was director of the Monroe Institute several times, I believe. Bob Monroe, who wrote Journeys Out of the Body, which was a book about outer body experiences, and they do studies at the Monroe Institute about outer body experiences, astral projection, the Gateway Project, which is also linked to the CIA. Also, there's some declassified stuff there about us living in this hologram, and it's really crazy stuff. And Joe was actually, and I guess this is how he met Nancy. I didn't ask him, but Joe was actually asked to go to the Monroe Institute to be studied by Bob, by the DIA, I believe, the Defense Intelligence Agency. They wanted him to spend the long weekends from Thursday to Sunday in Nelliesford, getting his brain measured and doing all these tests. And he did this for 14 months. And he said he found some significant studies that showed that out of body actually does work. But before we get into that, let's talk about meeting Joe. We go to his place, beautiful little town, and he invites us into his home. What are your first thoughts?
Yeah, I'd read a lot about him. He's kind of like this mythical creature at the top of the remote viewing chain, and there he was, just sitting there.
Yeah.
And from what I had understood is that he's hard to pin down for an interview.
Yeah, he refused so many interviews.
Yeah.
It's funny, when we walked in, he turns to Nancy, a Scooter, and he goes, see, I had a good feeling about these guys. That made me feel so good when he said that.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, we're just two guys. I got tattoos and stuff.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And
we're barging in with these cameras.
with
and
these
stuff.
not even professional. Like we just got our little, dinky DSLRs and stuff.
Yeah.
It's not some big TV thing. And yeah, he had a good feeling about us, and we really got along.
Yeah, and they were super welcoming, and happy to basically let us do whatever we wanted.
Yeah.
He showed us all around his house. So welcoming. He had boxes filled with cassettes of his live appearances where he did remote viewing
Over
live.
60 live appearances on TV, 60 live remote viewing sessions on TV, which is more than you can say for anyone else in the remote viewing space.
And I saw that. I mean, I was just like, man, these need to be out there. Like, why does he have them here in this box? Like, I would love to digitize those and get those out. Because
I'm working on that.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm working on that. I want him to get somebody to do it for him.
Yeah.
But because he did a TV show in Japan, which he touched on, where they had to find 24 missing people. This is so fucking wild, honestly. They had to find 24 missing people, and he ended up finding 12.
That's insane. Insane.
We're talking double blind. Yeah. He has no idea what he's looking for. He knows the person.
Yeah.
He describes the person. It's so insane that he's like, yeah, did you guys know he was Korean? They're like, huh? They went to double check. Yeah, he was adopted by a Korean family. He now lives in Korea. This is outside of Japan. He's in this building, on this floor, in this room.
Yeah.
Show up with the cameras. They show up with the camera. There he is. Their brother's crying, and they're all like, oh my God. Like, that is crazy.
And that's actually a verified thing.
It's verified.
Person.
And they had skeptics on the show.
Trying to figure out how to...
Trying to disprove him actively.
Yeah.
Like, after the show, even going behind there, looking like, this is a trick, He knows something. How does he know anything about a missing person?
Right.
The missing person was brought to him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that was one of the most... so he showed us some of those sample sessions, and when I saw him, I was like, so where is this your final debrief?
I was confused as well,
because it was so matter of fact. Here's the height, the name,
street names,
these
the
maps
subway maps
that he drew, and he's like, no, this is my session, and you compare it to the sessions we do where it's like different stages.
Yeah, we're like
scribbles.
edgy, scratchy, smells warm.
Yeah,
like all these.
But he was like, things. No, this person is 5'9". Their age range is between
57, 58.
Yeah,
no margin of error.
No scratches off or side notes. It's all just written there. So that was surprising to me. It told me okay, this person has
whole other game,
and a whole other process too, which I have never been shown yet.
Yeah.
And that got me so excited.
Dude, it got me excited, but at the same time, it's like seeing someone who's super talented in a field that you want to pursue, and it kind of discourages you.
That too, yeah.
Where I'm like, well, I'm gonna fucking give up. This guy's way too good. And
but you're like, well, he's got a different technique. Maybe if I learn
maybe
that,
I
I
can
get
learn
better.
that. That's right.
That's what I thought.
And I'm interested to figure out what that technique is. In time.
I hope it's not just feel it.
Yeah.
And just write what comes to mind. I hope there's more to it than that. There probably is.
Here's the thing. Here is the thing, because I think speaking with Ed, I have to also speaking with Joe, I have to also speak about Dr. Ed May.
Okay.
Who is still the chief, researcher and physicist and scientist behind remote viewing, still to this day, still studying.
And he's
83
monitor,
now,
right?
He was the senior scientist at SRI.
Wow. Yep.
So he was up there. They had to. The scrutiny that they had to build to really study this, because they are. You have to understand, Joe can have his stories, and Ed Dames can have his stories, but this is a physicist.
Yeah.
This is someone who was hired to study it and to be skeptical, to be the most skeptical, and to create the protocol that needed to be put in place in order to measure this properly, statistically, scientifically. Yeah. And we're talking everything from numbers, from them measuring their brain waves, to everything, to remote viewing in submarines. Like, they tested it to no extent. Like, there's so much work on this stuff. Yep. Joe even jokes about there's more studies on this than there is about aspirin, which I thought was interesting. And so they put together, Ed was tasked to put together, first of all, they had to, let's start with the remote viewers. They reached out to 600, this is from Ed, they reached out to 600 people. Okay. And these weren't random people. So these were like Mensa level, some of them, so geniuses. Other were in CIA intelligence, and so really smart people. Yeah, exactly. Autistic even. They would go there. So they made a group, and out of those 600, Ed said there's only 1% that has notable psychic ability.
Interesting.
And so they, I think, whittled it down to like 10. But even now, if you speak to Joe and if you speak to Ed May, they'll tell you there's like 4 or 5 that are really good.
Right, Joe was saying that.
Yeah. And you want to know the interesting thing that you didn't hear? Because you're like, okay, what do they have in common? Because they looked for all the commonalities.
Oh, sure.
The only commonality, very significant, they all had synesthesia.
Oh, wow.
Each one of them.
Did Joe have?
I believe
so.
About
that?
We didn't talk about it, but
damn,
this is what Ed May said. That. They all do.
Wow.
And not even like a light form of synesthesia, like straight up hearing colors and seeing sounds and shit like that.
Wow.
So this is, so I'm like, well, that's something that you guys can look for now. He's like, absolutely. He's like, that is, it's not something they planned out, and it's just something that happened that way.
I have a close friend in the memory world who has a very significant synesthesia. I should ask her if she has any.
Ooh, that would be.
Because I was talking about in memory how I have a trained synesthesia essentially for
That's true.
Numbers and things like that, but it's not natural. But for this memory athlete, she has it. She's always had it.
So there's another portion of this that might be tough, because does she sort of have this automatic memory?
She is amazing. One of the best at, say, words and names and others, but those are so natural for her. Sometimes when you ask her, like, what's your technique? And you hear her talk about it, and it's kind of what I do, but on another level where it's
automatic.
Like, you're not really doing anything. You're just being you.
And
it's frustrating, right?
Ed had mentioned that those make terrible remote viewers.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
He had this guy who is like the best memory guy. He did like 30,000 digits of pi, 35,000 digits. You might know him.
Is it Daniel Tammet?
I could be.
Because I reached out to him recently because I wanted to talk to him physics stuff, and that was the first name he threw at me. And I know a lot about Daniel Tammet. He's a bit of a con artist.
Oh.
I wonder if that's him. I know he memorized a lot of digits to that extent. So maybe that's
this
him.
person was autistic or on the spectrum.
That's the guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Asperger's, right?
Ed, Ed.
He tested him?
Yep.
Ooh.
And they said no good.
The thing is, there's some stuff about him. Whether he was, well, I don't think there's any argument over whether he was on the spectrum or not, but
Yeah.
whether he was using memory techniques or having natural ability was largely in question. He's mentioned at the end of Moonwalking with Einstein, if you want to go back and reread.
Yeah. So the problem that he found with memory athletes, so I don't think he knows the difference between a memory athlete and someone who has like photographic memory.
Okay.
Because I do think that's like a condition you have, like when you're on the spectrum and you have this sort of photographic memory.
Yeah.
But most people don't know that memory athletes are just average people who practice. But what they found is that they're very front-loaded. The overlays are insane with people with like this automatic memory, because they will recall so many things.
I see.
And so as soon as you feel something, or it maps to something,
right?
it jumps on this neural pathway and you get an image. And so you become immensely front-loaded.
Got it. Okay.
And that was a
so
problem.
It's hard
there.
to kind of block out that.
Right. Which is not what you have. And that's what I was trying to explain to Ed, but I don't think he really understood. I think for him that's a whole, no, memory people are bad at it, but I don't think most people understand, what memory athletes are, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he doesn't understand, and
Yeah. I'll have to ask him more.
Yeah, so that was we talked to Joe about all this. He mentions all sorts of rigorous training and military guy, man. These guys, they get up at 4 a.m. and they're like, working for 12, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, and all for, progress and being studied and some
stress. Right? He talked about a lot about the stress of that job. Some of the tasks they have to do just weighed so heavily on them.
Yeah, some of them quit. A lot of them quit. Most of them quit.
Yeah.
They couldn't handle the stress. I mean, the stress, and what we mean by stress isn't just remote viewing under pressure. It's a lot of times being taped, being videoed, being monitored by DOD, by DIA, by all these 3-letter agencies that you're speaking about your career, your job safety, and the fear of missing a target or not being accurate, is linked directly into the fear of losing your job.
Yeah.
So it must be definitely a high stress environment.
And all while doing something that is ridiculed.
Yeah.
And like you have that pressure, right? You can't kind of talk about it, or you don't want to talk about it because you'll be laughed at.
Yep.
Yeah, that's tough.
I asked Ed May in the interview, I was like, is this, I had to ask, is this real? What do you, and he says to me, he's like, let's say you're a chef and you have, I love physicists, by the way, because they fucking dumb it down for me. They're so smart. They're like, oh, here's your reading level. He goes, let's say you're a chef and you're opening this restaurant. You have 19 seats. And first night you open the restaurant, it's a great success. 19 people. Okay. Great. Second night, 17 of those 19 people return. Is that a success?
Yeah.
Yeah. Gold star.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there are 19 of these intelligence agencies in the United States.
Okay.
17 of them came back.
Oh, yeah.
Time and time again.
Yeah.
They came back up to close to 500 times total with individual missions, we'll say.
They wanted that delicious dessert again.
He has a graph of all the agencies, how many times they came back each.
Cool.
And now 99% of all of these missions are still classified.
Okay.
But he showed me the graph, which is interesting. And the DIA came back 172 times for individual missions, not including the times they came back for the same missions. They loved their work, what they were doing. Huh. And part of that was, I believe it was like finding drugs coming off boats. And the remote viewers were just really good at it. And I guess, again, it speaks to like the entropy of like maybe the product that was on board or something.
Yeah.
And they could clearly see it. So they came back 172 times because they were like, yep, this works. And they loved it.
And it's cheap.
Yeah.
Right?
Super cheap.
You need paper and a pen. That's it.
CIA, like once or twice. FBI once or twice. But then, yeah, you had all these other agencies so many times.
Very interesting.
All right, let's get back to Joe a bit. Joe, takes us through his home. Lots of you look through his home, lots of like Asian inspiration. He spent a lot of times overseas, in working in Japan. I believe in like Vietnam also, and so heavily inspired by like Buddhist and Asian culture. We got to look at his bookshelf. We got to look at all this stuff, which is really cool. Do you recall any of the remote viewing sessions that he had, or like stories he had related to remote viewing?
Yeah, I mean, the big one was, and this was after we were talking for like an hour and a half already, and he's telling me normal stories that were very believable. And then at this point, I'm like, I'm in. I trust this guy. I have a good feeling. Like, I can't imagine this guy's making any of this up, for that he's not able to do what he's talking about. And then he loads us with this remote viewing session he did where he viewed Mars a million
years
BC.
ago. Yeah.
And it's, you think, okay, well, I just believed everything he said, so I probably have to believe this too.
Yeah.
And you talk about on your other podcast a little bit, if you want to say
Yeah,
what you
I
saw.
also there is a video, or there will be a video out on it that I'm making individually on this channel. So I don't know but this is it here, the Mars exploration.
Oh yeah.
And what's interesting about this is, like Nelson mentioned, he showed us sessions that were highly accurate. Actually, before we get into this one, let's talk about the session where he followed the agent.
Oh yeah. Okay.
He was tasked to find the location of an agent for one of these intelligence agencies. And the agent would be at 3 different locations. And I mean, it is okay. Maybe let's back even further. When Joe was entered into this project, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
He had to do a test right off the bat.
Oh, right.
5 remote viewing sessions. He scored a 1 out of 4. That's how they measure it. They have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 being nothing, 3 being maybe, 2 being okay.
Pretty close.
Pretty close. Like you're in the vicinity. 1 being dead on.
Yeah.
And so most of the times you would find it between the 2 and 4 range. Joe scored 4 number 1s. They'd never seen it to this day. Had never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
And you have to understand what that means is that these physicists are testing, these scientists are testing Joe, and they make no distinction between what Joe is seeing and what the target is.
Right.
That is the number 1.
Yeah.
It is not, it is 1 for 1.
Yeah.
That is remarkable. After Joe did that, he tanked.
Yeah, he had like what?
20
to 30
sessions.
Bad sessions.
That were just terrible. He was even beating up on himself and everything else until he had this other session where he got this headache and this loud sound, and then it was an alarm, and he got right back into it. So it's something about confidence too that speaks in. He wrote a whole paper about that. But then they had that. And to jump back to Ed, during this time, Ed was tasked, I think, with other people in creating a team of scientists who would study, who would actively try and disprove this. There were a dozen of them. And these are people, highest researchers in their field, in physics and all this, right? Yep. Just really, really smart people who had to come up with a protocol. And that protocol was like, hey, you have to do this under these conditions or else we can't measure it. And they did that, and they continued studying it for 2 decades because it was so riveting. He even had people come in and try and disprove it, and he said, hey, if you can disprove it, the guy, one guy, like one of the smartest geniuses that this guy knows, like a Nobel winner or whatever, he goes, I think this is all bullshit. And he's like, I know. He's like, all right, I'm going to study this. I'm going to look into it for like a year. And if, and then Ed May says, if you convince these other 12 people that this is bullshit, I will retire happily and I will work for you. We will study whatever you're working. And he goes, okay. And he's like, no, that's not all. If you work with these 12 people for the next year and find that there's something to this, you got to work on this project. And he's like, deal. To this day.
Yeah.
The guy works on this project.
Oh, he does? Okay.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So really interesting little tidbit of information. But it just shows you the absolute rigor that these, and this has to be emphasized. This isn't up in the air. This isn't us sitting at our desk doing a little session. This is like closed room, double blind. We're going to look hard and long at these sessions.
Yeah.
And they even had a structure for, what was really interesting. They called it a fuzzy set and a clear set.
Oh, okay.
And so a clear set would be if you were to name all the countries that had 1 million or more people, all the cities that had 1 million or more people, you could name those.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're excluding all the ones that might be one short.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't be clear set if they were one short. And so there has to be a way of measuring that too. Yeah. And that's what they call a fuzzy set.
Fuzzy set, okay.
And so they had to figure out a way of measuring the intangible or measuring, the subjective. And the way they did that was the monitor would then ask the remote viewer and look at the drawing, let's say, and he would say, what portion of the drawing is a building?
Okay.
What percentage of the drawing is a building? And how accurate is this to a building? So if it was this with windows, it might be 80%.
Okay.
But if it was just this, it's like 20, 30%.
Okay.
Right? So they would be tasked, the monitor would have to be tasked on describing everything and going through it and being like, is this?
That's a lot more rigorous than I would have imagined. Yeah.
Exactly. And then they would have a number, 70%, it was this. And then they would measure that up against the target itself.
Okay.
And even like what portion of the paper does it occupy and like things like that.
Cool.
So very rigorous and very, very much they wanted to actively disprove it. That was their job so that they could continue their research, and you don't want to be a scientist, a physicist pretending.
Right.
What the fuck is that?
Yeah.
For 20 years?
Right.
Could you imagine having a doctorate at Harvard or whatever, winning a Nobel Prize or whatever it is, and just like turning a blind eye and being biased? Like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah. I mean, on one level, I can understand maybe in academia, you've studied something for so long, it's going to be hard to shift those people, to shift your worldview. You might stand by your results.
Yeah, but these are people who were skeptic. They had to be skeptic and they had to have an open mind. So those are the two factors that they had to have.
But I was going to say, ultimately, for me, the reason I studied physics was because I wanted definite answers about the world in a very scientific way. So as a physicist, I feel like that's what you're after is the right answer. And, the evidence and the way you study it is going to be what you base those.
But somebody who's got a degree in, let's say, psychology, it could be argued that the last thing they want to do is go into parapsychology because it feels, it sounds a little,
it's got the giggle factor.
But it's there. I think one person who I'd have to go back in the interview, but somebody who studied this parapsychology the most was actually like the head of the psychology institute in England or whatever it was, and so like very credible people in psychology world studying parapsychology because there is something there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we get through all this. It's clear as day that Joe McMoneagle has absolute talent and a gift. He is then asked to follow these 3 agents and describe their whereabouts. And the agent, the descriptors and the drawings are fucking crazy accurate.
It was like being in a damp, like in a sauna.
Whoa.
He says it was very hot and very humid.
This is with the grays?
With the grays.
Yeah.
So he says the temperature in there was super hot and very, very, very humid. So he says when we get into this little space, a door closed and another door, this door opened, he says, and fresh air came in.
So it's almost like those creatures had to live at a different temperature to be comfortable or something.
Maybe, and that's probably why this guy had some type of a helmet or something.
Right.
Because Travis was not, I don't think he was meant to wake up on the table, right? So there was a ramp. He says the guy led him down this ramp. And he said when he got to the ground, first of all, he said this was a gigantic, big place that looked like a hangar, but it wasn't built like it didn't look like we built the hangar, basically. And there was a portion of it that had this beautiful yellow light, like if it was glass.
Yeah.
He says he didn't know if that was the sun shining in or if it was just artificial sunlight. Right. And he says he looked back and he saw that it was the craft that he had seen in the forest.
Yeah.
And the other crafts that were parked, he says there was a whole bunch of them. They all look like, I guess, like squashed. Imagine taking a Tic Tac
Yeah.
and squashing it a bit, making it a little bit more like
Oval.
not perfect cylinder, kind of more oval on.
Right.
And he was a whole bunch of them. They were silver, and the floor he remembers was green, and it felt like rubber. And he says, keep in mind, this is 1975, so this is not stuff that we had much of at the time. Anyway, this person led him through this place. So they walked, and there was 2 doors that automatically opened, like we would have, or, 2 doors opening when you go into a grocery
Star
store.
Trek.
Yeah, or even grocery. I mean, you walk into, Loblaws, it'll just open like that. And he says, and there was a smaller hallway. They walked into another room, and when he went into that room, there was a woman and a man, again, very tall, blonde, and very muscular. The woman said she was drop dead gorgeous. The men were super built.
How tall?
He's 6'2".
Yeah.
And he said that
for
they
him to
were.
say they're tall. He's a tall gentleman.
He's 6'2", and he said they were definitely taller than he was.
So 6'7", maybe 6'5".
Not as much. No,
or?
he said probably 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah.
He goes not much taller, but taller than him.
Nordic looking.
Very Nordic looking, very muscular, wearing a blue jumpsuit. He says as soon as he walked in, the guy that had brought him there left the room. He went through another door and left, and the 2 that were there immediately grabbed onto him. There was a chair, and he started fighting them. He says, I didn't want that. He says, I was a strong guy back then. He's lumberjack.
Yeah.
He says, there was nothing I could do. They were so strong. He says, they just put me down on this chair, and all he remembers is the woman took this wireless apparatus, put it over his mouth, and he was out. He was out. And woke up. When he did come to, he was on the road.
Saw the craft.
Naked. Yeah. On his stomach. And he just remembers looking up, and the craft was right above him. And he says it just shot up. And he says, and the trees that were there went like a vacuum, I guess, which is interesting because
a lot of times trees don't
move like that. Yeah. So it's interesting that he
remembered that.
That he remembered that. Yeah.
Wow, even the idea of him being on a mothership of some type,
right? Yeah,
and just that visual of, there's like a control center, and there's like, that just makes it so real. It makes it feel so real to me, and that's a wild thing to leave out of the movie, by the way.
That's what I always said.
Maybe it just didn't make for like the perfect Hollywood story, I guess. Because you're like, what a weird tangent,
human looking.
That's right, with fish bowls over their head.
Yeah,
you're like this
that just looks weird.
Yeah, it sounds like Mars Attacks or something.
Right? Yeah. They needed to make it more like dramatic and make the aliens mean or whatever. But
to this day, he's still affected by this clearly. So whether you're out there thinking, well, it could have just been this or this man, regardless of what anyone says, is clearly still affected by this.
Oh, yeah.
And it has consumed his entire life.
Oh, absolutely.
It has, to an extent, ruined his life because he was a lumberjack and now is no longer a lumberjack.
That's right.
You can't go back to lumberjacking.
Yeah. You can't go back on something like that.
And then you met his brother and friends, I believe.
I met, myself.
Yeah. Have you met his brothers?
No, I met I know two of the other people.
Two of the other witnesses.
The witnesses that were there.
Yes.
Mike Rogers, and I cannot remember the name of the other guy. If you give me the names, I'll tell you which one. And we've communicated. Very credible. Even though the guys themselves had internal fighting between them, none of them went off track saying this didn't happen.
Right.
So what they saw from their point of view when this happened in the forest, this happened in Sid Graves National Forest, I think it's called, right in Arizona, near Snowflake, Arizona. And what they saw was like a percentage of what he saw because he was inside the craft. But they saw it from the outside. They all continue very... to this day that they saw a flying saucer, and it was one of them. They all say it was beautiful.
Yeah,
they said it was a beautiful thing to see.
It was glowing?
It's glowing, yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I've heard as well in a lot of reports. There is that, I don't know if you've heard like that Logan Paul had this tape.
I actually got news on that. I was actually, I don't know if Logan Paul got the tape. He saw the tape.
Did he see the tape or did he record the tape or something about him having a copy or something?
So
right?
from what I understood, because this was James Fox.
This is the first and last shout out Logan Paul is getting on this podcast.
Yeah, right. Well, it was James Fox. I think he was on Rogan talking about what happened. And there's a guy called Chuck Clark who has this videotape. Chuck Clark is a guy who, for a long time, lived up at Rachel near Area 51.
And important to say videotape.
Videotape, yeah, video cassette tape, right. It's true. Very important because it also degrades with time.
That's right.
Very important, yeah. And he's not the person who filmed it. There's two people who filmed it. From what I understand, they're looking for those two people.
Yeah.
Because I don't think those two people wanted to go public. They were apparently in their car and they had the camera set on its side in the middle console. And suddenly a flying saucer came right over them and there's like an orange light. And then it goes and you see this craft it's obviously the traditional disc shape and it's wobbling.
And it looks like it has skin or something.
It's like glowing orange and stuff. So when Logan Paul reached out to this guy, apparently, he offered this guy a ton of money. I think it was like $100,000. The guy said no. And, for a guy like that to say no, that means you're scared of something, right? That's a lot of money. So
that is a lot of money to say no.
Just to say, here's a videotape.
Fake UFO video, right?
So that says a lot right there. Anyway, apparently, Logan Paul had a hidden camera, and while they were watching it, recorded it. But I don't think he ever went public showing it. I think he could have gotten in trouble. I'm not 100%. All I know is that because I'm working with Bob Lazar, there was a lot of people talking about Bob Lazar when that came out because they were like, did Bob see that?
That's right.
Bob should see that. So I immediately called Bob and I said, did you hear about this? He goes, And then I explained. And I said, would you be interested in seeing it? He goes, well, yeah. He goes, of course, I don't mind, but he doesn't want to, he just goes, I'm not going to comment on it, even if I see it.
Yeah.
He goes, maybe it's fake. I don't want to.
That's right.
I don't know, right? So I spoke to James Fox and he says, I don't have it. So there was communication. James said, if you want, you can reach out to Chuck Clark yourself and see what he says if you want to make you see it. Obviously, I was not going to be able to convince Bob to go see Chuck Clark because he lives in Arizona, if I'm not wrong. So I said, I'm not going to waste anybody's time by calling them and then I can't do anything. So I didn't bother. And then when I later spoke to James Fox, he told me that there's a possibility that video will go public soon. So
how long ago was this?
Maybe 3 months ago.
Oh wow,
4 months ago. So who knows?
Interesting.
Yeah,
I would love to see that video.
I would too.
I've seen a video or picture online that had like a similar description of how it moved and the color. I'm not sure if James Fox retweeted it or.
I don't know if. I don't think it's ever gone.
No, I don't think so. But I think there was something similar to the description. And people were asking, "Is this what you saw? Is this what was on the tape?" And they were asking Logan Paul. And
one of the things that I think is very honorable is the way James conducted himself throughout the whole time. And I think that Chuck Clark really. I don't know if there's a relationship there where they know each other well, but all I know is that. Nobody really broke the code we're sharing, and including Logan Paul, because otherwise we would have seen this thing by now, right? So the good thing is that the chain of custody is still
intact. Yeah.
And I think that goes a long way. If it comes out, there's no question that everybody's going to want to hear if Bob Lazar has seen it.
Sure.
Because it was out there.
Exactly.
Travis. One of the things that I remember when I told Bob, I said, apparently it was wobbling and it was orange. Bob said, well, that's interesting because that's what it does.
you know, out of all the cases, you got Bob Lazar, we got Travis Walton, but then there are like some other really important cases in you know, the UFO business. One being the Ariel school.
So the Ariel incident happened back September 16th, 1994, in a place called Rua in Zimbabwe, South Africa, and it was around 10:15 a.m. is a primary school where there's a whole bunch of kids studying there. The really interesting thing about Ariel Primary School at the time was that the students that were there were from all over the world. They were not just African kids that were going to that primary school. There was a lot of war going on in Botswana and Zimbabwe at the time. It was horrible stuff happening. There was like genocide happening. Wow. So there was a lot of people from the Salvation Army. There was pastors going in there trying to help the communities out there. So when they would go out there, they had kids. They had to send their kids to school.
Right.
And that was the reason why Ariel had such a diverse group of kids from all over the world, from Australia, from Great Britain, from Canada, US, everywhere. So that's an interesting in itself, because that was a very rare thing in 1994 in South Africa to have these kids from all over the world.
Yeah.
It
makes that school a little bit special. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's cool that's something to note, right? And basically the kids all went outside, and there's this huge playground there. They're playing. There's what the teachers or the people who built the school grounds did is there's the school and there's this huge field, and they made a perimeter out of wood, like tree trunks. So they would take trees, cut them down, and they would throw the tree trunks down, and it was like the wood wood barrier, so the tree trunk barrier. So the kids knew not to play outside of the perimeter of where, the logs. They called them the logs, right? So suddenly they're playing and they hear the super high pitched sound. They see a flash. Not all the kids saw this, but the kids heard this. They look up and they see a few objects in the sky, silver objects in the sky. One of them, like a silver disc looking object. And one of them, there was some people saw one, other people saw three, and other kids saw more. Okay, so it all depends on their perspective, which is really interesting. And one of them, from what I understand, I have to go by the accounts of the people I know.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know there's kids who saw three land. The people I spoke to, they saw one. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they saw it clearly, and it landed, and there's two beings that came out of it. And from a distance, now keep in mind, this didn't land right next to them.
Yeah.
So some of the kids said it looked like a rock from far away.
Right, like a shiny rock.
Like a shiny rock.
Yeah.
But they knew that rock wasn't there before that. So there's these two beings that came out. So some of the kids were super intrigued and ran towards this thing, while other kids got so scared, ran away from it. So you got to remember different perspectives, and these are like 62 kids that are out there.
Yep.
Actually, 62 kids got interviewed, but there was way more than 62. And the ages were varying between 7 to 14 years old.
Yeah.
So 7 to 13, something like that.
I mean, insane that they would all lie about the same thing.
Yeah, that just doesn't happen.
Isn't a factor here.
Exactly.
They saw something. What they saw, we don't know, but we know it wasn't a mass hallucination or a lie.
Not at all.
Yeah,
exactly. So they get to eventually, as they're getting closer. Now there's two of those kids that the two that I know, two girls. One of them her name is Emily Trim. The other one is Liesl Field. They were side by side playing what they called jumping on the logs, hopping on the logs. So what they did is they had a competition where they would run from one log, jump to the other log, and do the whole turn of the perimeter. That was their game.
Yeah.
So they were kind of further out because they were running on the logs, and there was kids that were there but a little further away. So I can speak on the fact that I know both of them, and I got their versions of their story. I've spoken to other kids as well, but I don't know those kids as much as I know Emily and Liesl.
Yeah.
And they got to a point where as they were running around on the logs, Emily clearly remembers looking to her right, and she says there was two beings that were mimicking. They were, first of all, right next to them, and they were big black eyes, big heads, very thin bodies.
Jumpsuits.
Well, you see, what's interesting is Emily remembers that being their skin, while Liesel remembers it being a jumpsuit.
And what's interesting there as well is that when we did the remote viewing thing, Joe McMoneagle said that these beings that he saw on Mars or whatever also had this skin-fitting suits that you couldn't tell if it was their skin or not, and they were like silk, though. It was like this fine material that didn't have wrinkles.
Well, actually, it's interesting because Emily remembers it being like a reptile.
Oh.
So she clearly remembers. She says not only does she remember the body, it was black. By the way, they were wearing black.
Yeah.
If it was a skin suit, if it was a suit, it was black. And if it was their skin, it was black.
Right.
But Liesel remembers the face being white, okay, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
But wearing a black jumpsuit.
Yeah.
Now, Emily clearly remembers, she says, I remember whatever they were wearing was black and looked like a reptile.
Yeah.
And she says, as they were moving, the sun was shining on it, so it shimmered. Like, you know how you sometimes see like a scale of a serpent, like of a snake, it could shimmer with the light and change it's like the colors almost. She says that's what it kind of did. So she saw that because it was sunny that morning.
And this was beside them?
They were running on the log. So keep in mind, the girls are, first of all, they're like 7 or 8 years old, so they're small. And they're on top of these logs. The two beings were right at the same height. She says they were not touching the ground.
They were floating.
They were floating. She clearly remembers that they were this much off the ground and that when they jumped, the beings jumped.
Wow.
So is it her perception or were they doing that? That's hard to know. We don't know.
Yeah.
And so the girls stopped and these two beings approached and Emily was to the right, Liesel was to the left, and she remembers, I've spoken to both of them, so I'll start with Emily. She remembers receiving, like instantly looking into the eyes, and she says it was as if you took a big picture book and you just flipped the pages super fast, and all these images are just in her mind. They're just coming in like ta, 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 ta. So she says it was like overwhelming amount of stuff, and the last image was an explosion.
Whoa.
Like a
the end of the world.
nuclear explosion.
Oh my God.
And Liesel remembers the telepathic communication about the planet.
Huh.
Something about all the trees would all go down and that people were dying, they couldn't breathe. And something about we have to tend to the planet, tend to the water, tend to the air. Air and water was super important, which, look, in respect to the fact that this is a very strange occurrence, the fact that, and now keep in mind, these two girls that received these messages, Emily received messages about technology.
Yeah.
So did the other kids.
Yeah.
Now they weren't right there.
I remember those interviews saying, that we have to calm down on technology.
About technology, about the planet and all that. Now these children, these kids at the time, this is not common talk.
It's not curriculum.
Not only is it not curriculum, but I mean, I'm born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s. 1994 in rural Africa in the middle of a genocide. You're not talking about saving the planet and recycling your cans.
No, dude, we were still throwing stuff out the window, and that's a good point to make, is because that stuff didn't come up in our schools until in the 2000s and later. Like I was in high school.
That's
I graduated in 2001. And we never really learned, we learned reduce, reuse, recycle, and that was about it.
That's it.
That was about it.
That's
we didn't learn about global warming. We didn't learn about any of this stuff. So this is way
before.
Ahead, yeah.
So, the fact that the kids say they saw these creatures, the fact that they saw the craft, the fact that they explained how all this happened, how they behaved, and then that they received these telepathic messages all at the same time, that the messages were, pro-environment, be careful about Emily remembered getting a message She says there's a good way of using technology. There's a bad way of using technology. You could do better. That's the message she got.
Wow.
So think about that. As you're 8 years old, why would you think that? Why would that be, you know?
What are you, Greta Thunberg? What's going on?
That, you know,
it's crazy.
There's Emma, who is also, she's in you see Emma a lot in Encounters on Netflix. You can watch that, where when she was a little girl, she's interviewed and she's saying we shouldn't get too technologed, which is an interesting term from a child. You know, like you shouldn't get too technologed, which means we have to be careful about technology. Why would beings approach children, and why would kids? First of all, man, if these kids made this up, they're the best I've ever seen. I mean, there's just no way.
No, I remember seeing this, and even the drawings that all these children were putting together. And here's the funny part is that there are some people out there that will look at the drawings, the 50 odd drawings of all these crafts, different alien type drawings, and some people out there are like comparing them and being like, look, these don't even look the same. Yeah, it's like you're missing the picture.
Yeah, exactly.
These are kids who all drew.
That's right.
UFOs.
And aliens. Yeah, that's a big deal.
I don't even care if they don't look alike.
That's right.
Dude, that is crazy.
Yeah, and the number of drawings. What's interesting, I highly recommend people. There's 3 places you could follow up on this. One of them, the first one I recommend, is a documentary made by a guy called Randall Nickerson called Ariel Phenomenon. Yeah. So it's Ariel, so Ariel Phenomenon. Highly recommend that documentary. Second one is The Phenomenon by
Netflix.
James Fox.
Oh, The Phenomenon by James Fox.
James Fox. The last segment is on Ariel, which is very well done. And now on Netflix, there's one of the 4 is called Encounters, exactly. And one of them is about the Ariel incident. So all 3 of those are really well done, and you get to see the reality of what happened. Yeah. And obviously, you could YouTube this, and you get to see a lot of what John Mack, he was the guy who reported on children. Not only did he interview them, but he like psychologically analyzed them. Yeah. The guy was the head of he was the head of the psychiatric department of Harvard. I mean, this guy was like
legit,
very legit, right? And he took this extremely seriously and took these kids' accounts seriously and said, they saw something.
Were they approached by, I might be conflating this one and the one that happened in Australia. Were they approached by the Air Force afterwards?
No, that's the one in Australia. That's the one in Australia. I do know that there was something that did happen at Ariel afterwards.
Where they were like, shut the hell up?
I don't think it was a shut the hell up. I think from having spoken to Randall, and Randall probably would be the best person to talk to about this, something about the State Department of the United States government showed up at Ariel. Right. And he knows a lot about that.
Yeah, maybe they investigated, maybe they...
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know what that was all about, but the fact that the State Department showed up is kind of interesting, because why would they show up if nothing happened, right? So there's also pilots that are commercial pilots that actually had the objects on radar. Wow. So it's not just kids talking, right? Yeah. And thousands of witnesses around Rua who saw this, the crafts.
It was within a few days, I think, too. Right. Not just that day. There was like, it was leading up to this.
Correct. Yeah. So there was a meteor shower. At a certain point, there was a meteor shower that happened, from what I understand. So there's this like crossover where there was a meteor shower and then there was actual sightings. So you could just imagine back then, where this was completely insane to talk about this. As soon as you hear, oh, there was a meteor shower, oh, it's just a meteor shower.
Of course.
You know what I mean? But it wasn't. Yeah. There's something else happened.
Yeah, so clearly a meteor shower doesn't land
and there's no people that come. Yeah, that's the whole thing.
That's the difference. In case you're wondering out there.
Actually, one of the things I want to say is when I first asked Emily about it, and just what she said says a lot about how a kid thinks, and it made me realize it's true. I would have probably thought the same thing. She says, when I first saw them to my right, she goes, I was trying to figure out what kind of animal that was.
Right. Right. 'Cause you're not human. So
which makes sense because you're not thinking this is
Yeah.
an alien.
Yeah.
You're thinking, oh my God, is that an animal? Like, so that's important because that's exactly what
the
went through
first
her
thing
mind.
the kids thought wasn't, oh my God, an alien.
No.
Yeah, they were like
What kind of animal
startled
is that?
by
Yeah.
just something different. And then I think, probably like sitting down with that idea for a few minutes, that's probably where their minds started like coming together
Going
and be
like,
oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're standing, they're floating, they're,
That's one of the most credible instances of a mass sighting that's ever existed in modern history.
Absolutely.
That we've documented. I think the only thing that we're missing from that is actual footage of all that happening. But aside from that, like you said, there's pilots who picked it up. There's people around town who've seen it.
Yeah.
And I think with back then too, what was really tough to deal with was you had skeptical parents.
Oh, big time.
And that
was traumatizing.
That might have been like the biggest detriment to this whole story, from what I can gather, is the parents being like, "Shut up, you'll sound crazy."
Yeah.
You didn't see that.
Well, that's
And the teachers said it, the parents said it, and so they're all making these children think that they hallucinated this, and now these kids think they're crazy a little bit because they're like, well, I did see it, so I guess it's my brain.
Yeah.
That's probably the most unfortunate thing to happen.
It was like if you see all these documentaries and you read about all this, the kids went through like some really rough. It was rough.
Yeah.
It's because
They were told to shut up about it
instantly.
and not
Like-
from like some government cover-up
no,
side,
it was like
but from some
the
like
parents, from the teachers. It's like you had to go back to school and just go in the classroom and keep.
Imagine going to school the
know?
next day. Oh my
I mean,
God.
it's like, and pretend none of this happened.
Yeah.
I know that, Emily comes from a very religious background.
Yeah.
Her parents are both pastors. This was not easy for her because in the house or in her family unit, and her brother was also a witness, by the way. He was there, and he was an older kid. He was certainly there, very affected by this.
Yeah.
Very affected. He's actually never talked publicly about this and doesn't want to, which I respect enormously. He was actually more traumatized than Emily was, according to what I understand.
Because he could process it more.
He
at
was
his
older.
age.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
And so the fact that this reality was not being accepted in the household was a secondary trauma, because it's like you saw that, and then the people you rely on the most are telling you, no, this didn't
You're
happen.
lying. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is, especially as a child, that's got to be really hard to hear. So.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's and the whole religion thing. And here's what's really interesting about the time we're living in now, because more and more, if you look back into the history books, because there are sightings that date hundreds of years ago, and a lot of times these sightings are chalked up to be some type of religious intervention or some chariots of fire or a God descending on us or whatever it is. And so if you read the context of a lot of there's chariots of the God, if you read into a lot of those things,
Von Daniken,
it really puts in perspective, hey, change angels and demons into just extraterrestrial, change this chariot of fire, or this angel of fire descending into a light in the sky, not even on fire, just a light,
right?
Because that's how they would have described
it. That's right.
And the closer we get to modern times, I think now the conversation of UFOs and extraterrestrials are jumping more from these demons into ETs and whatnot. Because if you look at what happened in Virginia,
that's interesting.
In Brazil as well. Where you had not only a mass sighting, by the way, to this day, people still in that town. James Fox did an amazing documentary on that.
He did.
I highly encourage you guys to go check it out. It's called Moment of Contact.
That's right. Yeah.
Incredible documentary.
Very good.
One of the best documentaries I've seen in years, because the witnesses are still alive. This happened in '96.
Yep.
And
which is amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And there's still, as I've heard, still information coming out about this.
I know.
That will come out.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I hope so too. Yeah.
But what's really interesting about this is that like there's these 3 girls who are sisters, I believe, and they were, I mean, so many things. Watch the documentary, but the smell of ammoniac or whatever it was in the air, the sulfur,
yeah,
and even that, the smell of sulfur throughout this whole town, everybody. From the people in the hospital who said that
All
they
said
treated
that.
this extraterrestrial, to these little girls, to